Welcome back to the Own Your Awkward podcast. I'm your host, Andy Vargo, and every episode we get into what has made our guests vulnerable and how they've learned how to own their awkward in order to live their best life. Stay tuned so you can hear every awkward moment in today's show. Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Own Your Awkward. I'm super excited today to have a friend from the North, one of my newest friends, Alison Perry-Davies. Alison, how are you today?
I am great. Thanks, Andy. How are you doing?
I am doing excellent. Especially now getting to talk to you. This is one of my favorite activities that I do every week is getting to know people on this podcast.
Yeah, it's awesome. I'm thrilled and excited and really honored that you'd have me on your show.
Oh, thank you. You come highly recommended by,
Woohoo!
by a good friend of mine, Nicola.
I paid her, but it was in Canadian dollars, so I don't know how well she did.
Well, she did all right because here we are.
What?
So, Alison, in a minute, I'm going to put you on the spot and make you decide what your awkward thing is that you have had to own and share with the world. But before that, I'm curious, what's the most positive thing you see going on right now?
Yeah, that's a great question. Um, in the midst of all the crazy that's been happening, I think one of the really wonderful things is people understand how much they miss each other. And people understand the value of getting together and just how precious our time is and every moment spent together or apart, what that kind of means. I think that's a lot of what happened for us in the last few years. We really value our time together.
Wow, that's beautiful. That's such a good observation because I remember in the before times, people would be talking about, just being overwhelmed and all the things to do and
Yeah.
almost this frustration with having to go see family or whatever. But
Yeah.
taken away and outside of your control, it really makes you think, wow, how many of those moments was I not really present for?
That's right. And how many times, like you said, how many times did I think, oh, I have to do this thing? And then it suddenly became this, oh my gosh, I can't do this thing. And we started to all realize how incredibly important we all are to each other and just how much we need community.
Yeah.
Community is a big deal. And I think that was one of the, that was one of, and I'll tell you what else is something that happened for us. My husband and I, he was working from home and I write, so I'm at home. And oh, boy, I don't know, a couple of weeks into, lockdowns and such, he looked at me and he goes, "This is what our retarement's gonna be like. We're gonna rock this." Like we're just like
Like you guys have it down.
we love being together. So this is and I know that wasn't maybe the thing for everybody, but for us it was like, wow, we do this well.
That's amazing. That's such a great thing to be aware of, that this was
Yes.
kind of a practice run.
Yes, this is our practice run. Together for about 30 years. Okay, I wasn't sure if it was going to work, but I'll stick it out another 30.
Yeah, my dad was a school teacher for years and years, and when he retired, my mom said it was like the summer that just never ended. And I think usually she was
Oh.
saying that kind of begrudgingly, like he never went back to school.
My husband's in the military, so we're very used to being apart, and for us our time together is always really awesome because here's the thing: when the person's in the military or any job that takes them away for a long time, um the thing that I notice is that we have an opportunity to really long for each other.
Mm,
And sometimes people who do the day to day, that's great too, but they never get that opportunity to really long for the person. And we've had like 3 decades of longing, and so we're like, okay, now we're done. We're ready to
yeah,
move on to the next thing.
yeah. It's true. They say absence makes the heart grow fonder, and uh, that's a real world example of it. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Alison, I think the world is here to listen to you and to know what your awkward thing is you've had to own to live this awesome, amazing life you're living right now.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I'm telling you, I was thinking about this. What is my awkward? Because I have so many to choose from. Like literally. I mean, is it my phobias? Is it my social anxiety? Is it just that I speak too long, too loud, too fast? Is it that I don't really know for sure, but I would say that I have a list of issues and a list of awkwards that is quite extensive. And I think that's, I guess my awkward is that I'm just unbearably human.
Ah, I love that. Yeah, and that's a great observation because on this show I ask people to pick that thing, but in reality, we're a combination of things, and it doesn't necessarily have to be any one thing that we lead with.
Yeah, I think so. I really did try to come up with one really good one, and I thought I just have so many that all my other little issues would be so jealous if I chose just one.
You
They'd
can't
be
do
like,
that to your
"Whoa,
other issues, can you?
what about me?"
Right.
Hey, I wrote a song called "I've Got Issues," so I mean, I think I can own that quite well.
Definitely. So, do you know, was there a point where you noticed that you've got all these little things, all these phobias, all these different little human issues that pop up that are awkward? Was there a point where you noticed you had to just let those be as they are and not interfere with what you want to do in life?
Oh, that's a great question. I did. I think that for me, I was a anxious kid. There's many little labels or explanations, I think is a better way. Label sounds a little bit judgy. There's explanations for people being who are maybe overly sensitive or empaths or just whatever artists or whatever it is. However it is that we see the world that maybe is a little bit all over the place, not that beautiful linear fashion. My husband is quite creative, but he sees things in a very linear fashion, and I'm ping, 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 and so I don't see the world that way. And I think I there was a few things and times in my life where I went through things that really shattered me,
Mm.
and coming out of that, I started to notice we're all like that. We all are really just one kind of thing away from being shattered. And if we could look at all of the different things that make us unique, maybe our phobias, maybe it's our passions, whatever it is, if we can take a look at that and go, okay, so this is just how I'm wired, and I've got to find a way to be okay with how I'm wired. I have to, because this is all I've got. And so if I don't sort this out, it's never going to work. And I think I was already getting there. I think I was pretty securely there, and then I had an accident. I was in a motor vehicle accident about 7.5 years ago, and I sustained a brain injury. And then I had to relearn a bunch of things.
Wow.
And I think that that's what really got me to the place that it was. I mean, I'm doing really. I mean, I wasn't walking or talking I mean, I had to relearn a lot of things. But and now there's still a lot of things where my brain just goes on pause when it wants to. I forget what I'm saying in the middle of a sentence, and not just because of my age, like the real deal. Like it's just, or I get really tired, or I get, all of those things. And life is a beautiful mystery. And for me, I spent so much time worried about everything that it's just time to go, okay, this is just who I am and how I am, and I've got to figure it out.
Hmm.
So, that's, as they say, it's a journey, not a destination. So I'm still on that trip.
I love that. And I like how you call out not spending so much time worrying about the things. I
Yeah.
I know, like for myself, when I work with people, I try to I think very much like a budget, like how you're budgeting everything or allocating whatever word you want to use for it. Sometimes budget sounds too restrictive, but wherever you're allocating your resources, and if we're spending 30% of our energy and focus on fear or worry, or for me, in my past, it was trying to fake it or fit into a certain way. So if all day long, 30% of my energy is going to, okay, I need to be or act this way, that means I'm only
Yes.
giving 70% to my dreams or my goals or whatever. And I don't want to give 70%. I want to give 100%.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm thinking too, when you're saying the 30%, I'm thinking, I'm sure I was much more committed to my phobias
Yeah,
and
well, and
my
even for me, I think it was
obsessions.
I think it was a much bigger number than 30%
I
too.
was thinking, wow, I'm only aiming for 30 now, man.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
So,
Yeah, but that's right. That's a good way to look at it.
so how easy was that? You just decided, hey, I'm good with who I am, and I'm not going to let these hold me back, and then I never looked back, or does that pop back up?
Oh, well, here's the thing. So I went through a series of, traumas and things, and then counseling for that, and many issues along the way. And I got myself pretty stabilized, and I actually worked with other people who were in that was what I did for a living. And then even after my accident, I was doing pretty well. And why I'm bringing all this up is that recently, in the last 7 months, anxiety has revisited me, and I had been quite free of it for a couple of decades. I other than the normal, oh, I'm about to, sometimes I could still get anxious going on stage just for the first line of a song, or,
Sure.
things like that, right? There would be those momentary anxieties, which is probably more excitement, but I filed it under anxiety in my brain for some reason.
Hmm.
So basically, I learned how to be okay with myself just by understanding that we're all pretty flawed. And I had many opportunities to forgive in my life. And I think that was a big deal for me, because learning to forgive myself and forgive other people, there's a way that we just see our humanity. We're all really broken, right? We're just these broken people trying to figure it out. And so when I look at it that way, then I'm like, okay, so if this thing is hard for me, let it just be hard. Like, just own my awkwardness.
Right.
Own my awkwardness in everything that I'm doing, and just learn to be okay with that and not be so crushing. I was a bully to myself,
Mm.
right? I was such a bully, so judgmental and unkind, that I just couldn't do it anymore. I wouldn't be able to survive and do that. And for me, that took a lot of counseling for me. That took a lot of learning how to forgive myself and to forgive others. And that was the walk that I went on for that.
Yeah. One thing that I think is beautiful there that you said, well, there's two things I want to point out, but first is that the idea that everybody's got this level of brokenness that we're all dealing with. And I feel like there are things that are so important: mental health, counseling, therapy, all of these things are important. But I think sometimes when we're approaching repairing ourselves, if we view it in the way of, well, I'll get to a place where I'm fixed and then I'll tackle life, that's where
Yes.
we have the wrong perception, because it's no, we will always have these issues and we need to do life with our issues.
Exactly. Exactly. Right? Like, that's it's beautiful. That's exactly it. I mean, whatever the thing is that we're dealing with, I don't know. There's so many things, but I've got to learn to deal with life in that, in
Yeah.
whatever that is. And that was a lot of it for me, was, and I had a lot of things that had wounded me, and I just couldn't quite let those go.
Hmm.
I wrote a book on it, and or just sharing. I didn't share the trauma themselves. What I shared was about my experience and triggers and how life felt for me after
Hmm.
that, and sort of how I found my way out of that windy road of, am I ever going to be okay? And sometimes it can feel like we're never going to be okay, but we are. We really are going to be okay. And as soon as we choose to do that, and that sounds like such a lousy thing to say, someone was listening right now, and they're really going through a hard time, and they're like, choose, you think I'm choosing this? And I'm like, no, it's not actually what I mean. It's at some point I decided that I was worth it,
Right.
whatever it took to stop being so afraid and so messed up. It was worth it.
Yeah.
And that's how it went for me.
That's amazing. Well, you're doing beautiful stuff. You look amazing. You look happy. That's great
Thanks.
to see.
I am happy, thank you.
I like the concept you touched on with your book, how you didn't focus on the initial issue. You focused on the feelings and the coping and
Yes.
after.
Yes.
Was that by design or was that accidental?
That was by design. I'll tell you, and let me tell you, that was very much by design. Although now, because here's the thing, because I have a brain injury and it's very hard for me to read now because some of the impact was on my occipital lobe, and so things get a little bit mixed up for me in reading. I'm doing way better, but so I had been a co-author in 3 books before, and they're all great books. And of course, when you're doing a book where people are sharing their common stories, much like so in the Wow series or the Family Tree series, they're just behind me over my left shoulder, or yeah, my left
See
shoulder.
those back there, yeah.
And so when you write a book with a series of authors, they give you a subject to write on, and a lot of people would love to hear. I call them tragedy to triumph stories. So it's basically what's interesting to people is, okay, so this was where you were at and this is where you're at now. How did you get there? So I get it. Those are really important stories to tell. So I'd written those books and then I was writing my own. And what came to me was, I just don't want to write anymore about the tragedy part. I'm okay to say, like I do say in the book, so in however many chapters or how many words are in that book, I have about 3 paragraphs where I say what happened, but just the line like I was sexually abused or I was physically abused. I don't go into detail about that. I don't want to traumatize anybody else. And I don't really, for me, I see that there's value for other people in writing about that. But for me, the value was, how did life appear to me? And how did I experience life post trauma?
Yeah.
Right. So how did that work for me? So I do tell stories about times when I'd be in the middle of something and all of a sudden I'm just losing it, right? I'm losing it. And it took me a long time to figure out, oh, that situation reminded me of this situation.
Right.
And I was responding to it as if I was being assaulted in the moment, but really what happened was, whatever, I was in a place that reminded me of it or something triggered me. So I thought that would be really important for other people to go, if you're in the middle of that right now and you don't know that that's what's happening to you, you just feel kind of nuts.
Mm-hmm.
This is a really natural response to that. Right. So,
Yeah.
just like if you're in some place and you're not used to their water, if you drink it, there is going to be a natural response. So don't worry.
Yeah. Don't
just,
drink the water.
just, just figure it out and carry on, baby. So yeah, so that's what I did. And I just thought, there's got to be a way that we can just start really looking at, okay, life's hard. I'm not going to say life isn't or can't be hard, but how do we find our joy in the midst of it? So that's my book is called The Art of Healing Trauma, Finding Joy Through Creativity, Spirituality, and Forgiveness. So that's what I wanted to talk about a lot in my book was, okay, so this stuff happens and we'll look at that. I'll look and describe what a trigger looks like and how that is. And then how do we find our way out of that? And
Wow.
how do we find even more than just out of it? How do I find joy? Because, we're still going to have sore backs and parents die and things hurt us. We hurt each other all the time and we hurt ourselves. But how do we find joy? And so that's been my personal trek of late is find your joy. And it's a very similar, now that I'm chatting with you, it's a similar take on what you're doing. And I love it. I think they complement each other. So yes, it for me, it's all about finding joy in the midst of it.
Definitely. Well, I think that's beautiful. I think that um, I had a conversation with a friend of mine a couple of years ago who is she's a coach and really coaches people on storytelling and
Mm.
communications. And I asked her, I said, well, what do I do? I need to tell enough of my story in order to give validity to my message. so that people know where you've been. I said, but but I don't want to dwell on that. It's just like what you're saying. It's like,
Awesome.
I
Okay.
don't want to stay in this space, right? Because there is, like you were mentioning, that trigger factor. Our brain doesn't know the difference of if we are thinking about something or if we're actually happening it. Like what to the brain, it makes the body have the same reaction as if
Yes.
it's happening. Same thing as if you look through a photo book with old memories, you feel the same way as if you're there. So it works good and bad.
Yes.
But she had given me that advice of, she tries to stay 10% on the store, the negative or the origin or whatever that is, and then 90% on what came out of it, which is very much in line with what you're doing. I think that's a beautiful way to do it, because really the focus needs to be on the journey, the lessons, and how you then find that joy no matter what. Because that beginning thing that's going to create all these triggers, that's going to be different for everybody, but with the same reactions or the same
Yeah.
set of types of reactions, I guess.
Exactly. And like, well, it's interesting what your friend had said. It was basically, it was my motto too, 10%, so that people understand, and yes, the validity thing, and also so that they can connect, right? It's we're just these beings that are longing for connection. We just long for it. We want to be connected in some way. And so when someone, it's like when I listen to someone, you watch a movie or you hear a song or you see a painting, it connects personally because it really is all about me, right? I mean, and it's all
Right.
about me. We can't, and that's not a bad thing. I mean, in some ways it's not, because it's how we feel connected to another human being, or my dog, or whatever I'm feeling connected to at the moment. But when we're talking about people are telling a story, someone sings a song. I mean, how many times, like as a songwriter, how many times has someone written a song and the first time I hear it, I think, oh, why didn't I write that?
Yeah.
That is such a good song, but it's not meant just, it's meant so much because they're saying my exact feelings, and that's what people love that. And
Right.
so I think, yeah, it's important when you tell your story. I'm so sorry that we don't know each other well enough yet, that if you have written that book, I don't know yet, but if you have, I'll get it. Have you written that book?
Not that book, no.
You haven't written that book yet.
I've written
Okay.
a book about life changes and overcoming life changes.
Yes, okay, I saw that. Yes.
That one's a little bit more structured in a program to walk people through. It tells parts of my story.
Yeah.
I have another book I've been working on for a long time that is just my journey. I don't know if that will just always stay a journal or if it will turn into something. I'm, on the fence about what to do with that. It's
Right.
therapeutic at the moment.
Yeah, I think now always write the book. If
Yeah.
you've ever thought of writing a book, write the book. That's what I have a friend, she's passed away now. But she had written several books, cooking books, and different things around that. She was a chef and a food critic,
Oh,
and at that time I was still had several books in the making, and she just said, write a book. Everybody needs to write at least one book.
I love that.
Yeah, and I'm glad that when I when I wrote my book, I actually said, hey Lizzie, I wrote the book.
Yeah. I did it. I'm
Woo!
sure she knows.
Yes, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
She's
I
probably
wrote the
reading it
book.
right now.
Wouldn't that be a trip?
Yeah. Well, and in true artist and author form, I love that you mentioned you had several going.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. Do you know what? Or there's like little things like, I have this box, don't anyone touch that box, because it's this wooden box. It's come with me through so many moves and everything, and there'll be like a little piece of paper this big, and there's
Uh-huh.
several of those with the best line I've ever written. That's
Right? I don't know which book this is going to go in, but it's ready to go in a home.
It is ready to go in a song or a book or a poem. It is so ready. And then I did. Oh, there is that one. And then sometimes I'll look through that book just to reminisce, and I'll go, ah,
I mean, that just
that's awesome.
that just sounds like a book right there, like lines from a wooden box, and it's just a compilation of all of everything.
Exactly.
Put it all in the same book.
I just might do that. Because they're, well, you know what? They all seem so profound to me. Well, but then of course some of them, right? Some of them are like, what was I thinking?
Right. I've had some where in the moment I think this is like the best writing ever. This is Shakespeare's gonna like, who's that? You know?
That's right.
And then later it's like, I didn't even spell there right. Like you get in your head about things. But then on the inverse, I'm sure you've had this too, where you may write something that might not even seem as profound in the moment, and then later someone quotes it back to you, or you
Yes.
see it, and it's like, was that? Are you sure that was me? Like,
Or that it impacted someone that way. So writing does that, and music does that. I know so many times, like, um when I'm not currently doing any music, but when I used to, I would sometimes think, oh, this is the most brilliant thing that's ever happened. And then it would be like, wah, wah, fell flat, right? Or, or
yeah.
I'd have like what I thought was the worst set in history. And then people would be coming up to me bawling, oh my God, that was so amazing. And I'm thinking, well, first of all, I was like judging them. Were you not listening to anything that just happened up there?
Yeah.
What's wrong with
I
you
was out of
people?
tune. The microphone
Everything
was
was bad.
feedback.
I
Like,
just went off on a tangent on something. Ah, you guys are not paying attention. How can I ever trust you again if you like this?
right. Yeah. I have this gauge sometimes where I'm like, oh, if that's what the bar is for good, then I don't know if I can trust your judgment. Like,
Exactly. Exactly. And then of course it comes back to it's all about me, because it's all about them in that moment, because
right.
something in that moment touched them. And
Mm-hmm.
that's all that like, why do we do it? I mean, otherwise I should just sit at my piano or whatever at home and never leave my house again. And I'm going to tell you, I have spent in my life the amount of I spent when I was coming through a really dark place, maybe 20 years ago. I spent over a year writing songs that I never wrote down.
Mm.
I just released them. And I just either sat with my guitar or at my piano and I just sang them. For me, most of them were worship songs, and I just wanted to connect.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, how could you not write them down? Because that wasn't what it was for. I
Right.
just needed to connect. And I didn't feel connected. I felt like I was free falling through my world. And
Mhm.
I just needed to connect. It was the only thing that made me feel grounded.
Well,
So
I think there's a big, excuse me, I think there's a big misconception there to the viewer. They they see the artist's goal to be to entertain and to please the crowd.
oh, yeah, that.
So why wouldn't you capture this? Because the world needs to hear that, and isn't that your main goal? When in reality, most artists and creatives, that while it's great to get out there and that's what you're doing, but the actual process of creating the art is for yourself.
Yeah, yeah. It is. And there's so many layers to it. It is. It's because if I don't, I can't breathe.
Wow.
I just, I don't know what else to do. I'll tell you, after I had my accident, and so a bit of my history is, so I sang for, however many years, and I did that in bars and clubs and, all that kind of thing. And then I spent almost, 15, 20 years in church as a minister, as a worship leader. I did that. And then I transitioned again back out, and I was kind of scrambling a bit with that. I wasn't really sure. I felt very strongly it was what I needed to do. It was what I was born to do. But it was a bit of a scramble, right? Just emotionally for me, and what did I believe in, and what did I think, and what was I doing any of this for, anyways? And I was just kind of feeling grounded in that. And then so it was a Saturday. My accident was on Valentine's Day, February 14th, 2015. Bum, 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 very. And on the next Tuesday, I was going into the studio with a guy that I'd been just recently working with to start working on a CD. And we were in the accident on the Saturday. And so since that day, music is hard for me. And it's a very, very long process to get back to it because I have vertigo, because I have for the first 3 years, my brain wouldn't stop vibrating. Like if you went like zzz, and how your tongue feels,
Yeah.
my brain just always, it was a very unpleasant experience. I don't recommend it.
Right.
Of all the things I've done, this is one I would least recommend.
I'd skip that day.
Sure, just skip that day. Why did we go on that car ride anyways? But oh yeah, and here's the real kicker. I found out later the young woman who hit us was a distracted driver, and she had gone through a drive-through and had French fries, and they'd fallen on the floor in the back seat, and she turned around to pick up her French fries.
Oh,
And when she looked up, there we were. And I always said, I knew French fries were my nemesis. They were going to get
oh
me
no.
one way or the other. Anyways, so I had been a disability case manager for about 4 years. That was my job at the time. And I just knew, I don't remember when, but it was around the 3-month mark, and I couldn't really leave the house. I couldn't drive for 3 years after the accident, but walking was hard, talking was hard. And I just thought, I need to paint. I'd never painted. I need to paint. And so I got someone to give me a ride down to the art store. I dumped like $1,000 and bought an easel and brushes and canvases and paint. And
I'm a painter now. I need all the things.
And that's what I did. I just started to paint. And when I first started it, literally 30 seconds was hard. I worked up to a minute, to 2 minutes, to 3. And before I knew it, I was, able to paint for 15 minutes. And then after about a year, I would be dizzy afterwards, but I could paint for, sometimes a half an hour, an hour. And,
Wow.
and it was just that I just needed to do something. I couldn't just not. I did. There was something crying inside of me to create something.
Mhm.
However, and they're not great. Some of them are pretty good, but for the most part, it was very somatic. And it was me feeling what it felt like to feel paint glide across a canvas and just feel alive again. So, that's how it works for me. I'm going to find something to do. People say, "Oh my gosh, you're so creative. You do so many things." And I'm like, well, yes, I would say that is correct. I do so many things. I'm not saying I do any of them well.
Well, there's that idea of just pursuing whatever is interesting in the moment. And
Yeah.
one of the things that I think is beautiful about that is, music became something that wasn't going to be feasible to be doing as easily. But art in whatever form, especially with painting, you can go at whatever pace you need to go.
Yes. Yeah.
You can come back to it, and that paint has dried, and you can add more to it, or you can start over with something different. Whatever you want to do,
Yeah.
it's up to you.
Yeah, it is. And I think it's when it's in you to create, I think that all the years that I worked in or created with music,
Mhm.
it was a transferable skill. It was, I somehow knew a little bit about, of course there's colors and blending and, when do you stop and what's too much. Bob Ross will tell us all about that. He was the master of it.
Yeah.
Um, but it was just, I knew already that how I felt in the moment was more important than all the rest of that.
Hmm.
It just had, something was inside that had to come out, and
Yeah. That's
that's
beautiful.
what I did.
Yeah. Um, Now I know I had a client who was very frustrated with himself because he would want to pursue all these different things, and kind of that, like you mentioned, that being that creative type, maybe not expert in any one field, right? But to be
Right.
able to do them all. And I had to kind of pause them and say, well, what's wrong with being an adventurer? What's wrong
Yes. Oh, I love it.
why
Yes.
maybe that's your thing. And not that we have to have a label on everything, because like you said, a label sounds more judgmental than maybe an explanation, but that can be who you are, is that you're going to go experience as much of any little thing as you can.
Yes. Yes. Taste it all.
Yeah.
Life is a buffet,
Right.
right? Why
Yeah.
do I want to restrict myself? Do I look like a girl who restricts herself? No, no, no. Why would I just take strawberries and not peaches? Like, I don't know. It's like one of those, there's so much out there. Taste it and see
Yeah.
that it is good. Like, there's just so much to play around with and enjoy. And yeah, life is a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful buffet. Yeah.
Definitely. Now, you mentioned your book. We have links to that in the description and to your page,
Okay.
so people can find you and follow you. It sounds to me like you've really found joy.
Yeah, I have found joy, and I found ways to remember joy when I can't, and to find my way back to it, and things. Yeah, it matters to me that I always remember that even when I kind of lose my balance, or I lose my way, or I feel like I'm in a dark place, because come on, us creatives,
Mhm.
we spend some time in dark places. We just,
Sure.
but it's remembering that I actually have the capability to find my way back to joy. If I feel lost for a little while, I can find my way back. I don't have to stay in this place,
Mm,
wherever that place is. If I felt lost or frightened or sad or whatever it is, I don't need to stay there.
mm.
There's a way, there's actually like a formula. I can do this and this, and it's going
Right.
to take me out of my head, out of the wah, wah, they can kind of.
As you were saying that, I was wondering if you had a trick or a thing that you do to say, okay, when I get to this space, you know.
I do. I have several, actually. If I'm anxious, if I'm okay, so if I'm feeling a little bit lost, I can even just know, if I just get up and do the dishes.
Mhm.
If I get up and put my hands in warm water and feel that, and clean a little space, just a small space, that can be the thing that can open me up. Just a small space. If I'm anxious and I'm finding it difficult to go for a walk, say, or something, because I'm, just a little, I can't cope with it that day, I can walk around my house. Not everyone has a yard. I have a yard, but if you don't have a yard, right, I can, walking around the house can actually start to stir up, get the serotonin, get the things going on in my brain,
Right.
excuse me, that need to get going. And I can do those little things. I can just start to do small things, or I can write down, just grab a piece of paper and a pen and just start writing how this feels and what I feel like, and if I'm ticked off or whatever's going on, and just, it doesn't have to all be beautiful and wonderful and shareable. Sometimes clearing physical space, either in my home or in my mind, is the thing that's going to open things up, and to not be afraid to explore that a little bit.
Hmm.
Adventure, I love that. I'm an adventurer.
Well,
Woo!
and one thing that you mentioned earlier, which really hit home, and I was gonna call it out, but then we got on other conversation, which is beautiful, which I love. But I did want to make sure and point out is you made a comment about, at one point you were feeling anxious, and you said it was about getting back on stage, and you said, I was feeling anxious. I said it was probably excitement, but my brain filed it as anxiety or something along
Yes.
those lines. And I thought that's so self-aware that we
Hmm.
that, that our brain tricks us in that way, and that our body feels the same way for both feelings, and yet
Exactly.
we interpret it differently. And if we can understand, you know what, my brain didn't do me a favor on that one, and if I
Yes.
can know that it could be exciting, I could maybe step into that situation differently.
Right, exactly, because if you grab your phone, right, and you're about to text, and it has the preemptive, it wants to
Oh,
tell you all
yeah.
the things that go onto that, or you're Googling something,
Hmm.
boys with, and then all of a sudden it's mustaches, cars, blah 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 blah. Our brain kind of does that. I have this feeling, and then our brain goes, it just is trying so hard to file it. It just wants to do that so much for us that
Right.
it starts to give our preemptive text to us. And if we snag onto one of those, then that's the one we're going to stick ourselves with. And it might not be accurate. And so that's the other part of it, is just okay, just hang on. Let's just see what's going on here for a minute.
Let's finish typing
Just
it ourselves.
yes, let's just, before I decide that there's a giant spider in the house that's going to eat me, maybe that's not it. Maybe, maybe, just maybe, it's something else. Could it
Yeah.
be? Why don't I just slow it down a little bit and actually feel the feeling that I'm feeling? Well, that's a lot of feels. As a writer, I have just broken my cardinal law, but I didn't write that, so it's okay.
Right.
Feel the feeling that I'm feeling.
Yeah.
In
I know.
one sentence, same word 3 times. Egads.
Yeah. I just edited one of my Facebook posts the other day. It was 2 sentences, but within 2 sentences there was the same word, and I was like, I just need to get rid of that other word. I can't have it in the same. I
No,
can't have
I
it
know.
together.
It's just like, that's when you know you're a real writer, because it's like, I
Yeah.
can't do that. I can't. Oh my gosh, what have I done? And then
What
someone
will
saying, "Oh, I
people
really
think?
like what you said." I'm like, then again, it's like I just came off the stage from singing. How can I trust you
Right.
if you could say that when I doubled up on words? Ah,
Yeah. And then you notice it, like just now, like when you're speaking, you start to notice, and it's like, oh wait, can I edit that out? I just, yeah. We'll just
yeah.
put a little
I'm
beep
just.
over.
Can we
Beep,
edit?
beep,
Can we
beep,
do
beep.
this? Can we do something with that in editing? Well,
Just
then
the
of
F
course
word feels.
sometimes it matters, right?
Yeah.
So I meant to do that because that was whatever.
There
Not
are
an
times,
alliteration, but whatever it was, I'm
yeah,
not
for the
sure.
emphasis.
That's right. That's right. I really wanted to drive that home to the listening viewer.
Yeah.
I
So
wanted
speaking
that
of
to
the
be so
viewers
important.
and the watchers and listeners, what is the best way for them to support you and help you out? What of the links that we've got in here?
Oh, that's awesome. Well, thanks. That's a great question. I think that I'm there's a few things that I'm developing that aren't happening yet, right? So, I do some art therapies and sound therapy and things like that. So that's sort of where this road has taken me. If they're interested to see what I'm doing, they can go to my webpage, alleywayart.com. ALIWAYART.com, Alleyway Art on Facebook. They can find out what the new books that I'm writing, if they're interested in things like that. Basically, anything I'm doing, those are the two that I can somewhat handle. I'm a wee bit technologically challenged, so
Well, that's
I'm like, yeah,
plenty right
I
there.
have all these other things. I can't tell you I'm ever going to see your message, but I will for sure on Facebook or and alleywayart@gmail.com. They can get a hold of me there too. I do have, hopefully by Christmas, I have some children's books coming out,
Oh,
and
beautiful.
I'm super excited about that. And yeah, so I just kind of just keep plugging along. I don't know what I'm doing. I just keep doing stuff.
Whatever brings you joy in the moment. That's what you're doing.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
That's that's it. Oh, and my podcast is coming up. Thank you for saying that.
Yes.
I am just starting a podcast. I've got a bunch in the bank, as they say, and
Hmm.
hopefully that will be coming out in September, and people can find me there. And it's really going to be a show just about how do people find their joy and
That's
what
beautiful.
are the ways that we do that.
Yeah. And so pay attention to that. Make sure that you're following Alleyway on Facebook so that you can catch the first episode right when it comes out, because September's, pretty much upon us. So
Yeah, maybe I should say October, but yes.
yeah. Well, and I'm a couple, we're recording a little ahead. So by the time this is out, it'll probably line up perfectly.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. That's awesome.
Yeah. So, and before we go, what would be that advice you'd give people on how they can own their awkward?
Own your awkward. I think really owning your awkward is find ways that you're different and celebrate those. Don't hide them. You know, put that out on your porch with a cocktail and say, "Yeah, baby, this is how I do it."
I love that. That's the first time I've had it explained like that, but that is the way to do it. That's really celebrating it.
Yep.
That's beautiful. Well, Alison, it has been such a pleasure. This conversation has been amazing. I could talk to you for hours. I think we have so much we could just unpack.
I know. This was wonderful. Thank you. I was nervous because I'm basically wired that way, and this was wonderful. Thank you.
Good. Well, thank you, and I look forward to much more collaborations in the future and getting to know you, and maybe making my way north and saying hi one of these days. And
Oh my gosh.
it'll be awesome.
Bring your mucklucks.
All right. Well, thank you, and everybody else. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to give Alison love all over the social medias and the website. Get her book, Find Your Joy, and as always, own your awkward. Thank you so much for listening in for today's show. Be sure to visit awkwardcareer.com to continue your journey. And of course, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends so they can find their awkward side and learn how to own it.